So Mr. Watson, he owns property in the community of Columbia off of Bullpine Lane, upon which he has a single family residence that's currently served with a private septic system. I got a call from Mr. Watson's representative stating that the existing septic system was having issues with groundwater intrusion. It just was not performing. They had several people go out there, contractors, designer also of septic systems, take a look, and it's not viable, not sensible to replace the system. There isn't any place to go, too many rocks, too much, the groundwater is too high. So they came to me seeking a sewer connection to TUD. County ordinance, well, I should go back. His property is about 375 feet from our sewer main that is in Barrett's Ferry Road. County ordinance requires that a property owner consider a connection to TUD when their septic system has failed. And in certain cases, they mandate it. In order to serve this property to TUD, Mr. Watson is requesting a variance from wastewater ordinance section 3.01, which requires a public sewer main to be adjacent to the property in order to serve it. The reason we do this, this requirement is there and in the wastewater ordinance is that it, if you think about an area, say like an urban area like Modesto, the water and sewer mains are all in the streets, and then you have smaller diameter service laterals to the property. This makes it very clear and easy for district staff to maintain the facilities all in the public right of way, and then everything on private property is privately maintained and owned. In the case of Tuolumne County, things aren't always as easy as they are in an area in the valley, for instance. We have topography we have to deal with, and so sometimes utilities need to go in places that aren't ideal. In the case of wastewater, we're frequently having to pump in order to get the wastewater to work down to the regional plant. We pump in Columbia, but also any connections in Columbia have private pumps. In order to prove this particular variance, Mr. Watson would need to install a public sewer service lateral at the right-of-way of Beretta Street. Eric, if you want to scroll to street view, we can kind of show this. Yes, I did. I'm getting ahead of myself. So it is my understanding the sewer main is near the fog line of the road on the side, the near side of Barrett's Ferry Road. And that line there with the triangle, that indicates roughly where the connection point would be. There'd be a box there with a clean out that would then in turn be connected to the sewer main in the street. From that box, where that triangle is, would be a private line the rest of the way down to Mr. Watson's parcel, approximately 375 feet away. In order to convey the sewer, he has to install a private sewer pump, again, because their property is lower than the sewer main itself. In this case, the sewer main's gravity, so it's what we call a pump to gravity connection. So our clean out will be fairly straightforward to maintain. Mr. Watson would be responsible for maintaining that line from the edge of the road all the way back to his home. I've obtained, Mr. Watson has provided letters from the adjacent property or intervening property owners stating that they would be willing to grant an easement to him if it's necessary. In the research that we've done, it's a little bit unclear given the age of the maps, whether or not this is the public right of way and a viable easement for him. So my inclination is that it is, but it's up to him to determine this. And I decided that I'd request the letters just as a precaution, that everyone involved knows what's happening and that it's documented that they're agreeable to this, so that the district isn't in a position to have to work this out later.
Director Ringen has a question.
Sure.
So I looked through this in detail, and a couple things I didn't understand or didn't see is I know that he has to pump up to the main, the connection point. What's going to keep it from backflowing back down to his property?
So he would have, most pump systems have a check valve on them. So at the tank where the pump is. So as they pump up, that check valve will close so that basically the waste will stay in his line.
Okay, so that makes sense. Then it's going to be at his expense to put that line in from his property to the sewer, correct?
Correct.
When in the future, if some of the adjacent property owners also want to connect to the sewer, will they be obligated to provide him some money in reimbursement for having put that in?
No, this will be a separate line. We explored a few different scenarios here where maybe there would be a public main, a public force main, or a private common force main where everyone would connect to the same line. We feel like it's just better to have everyone have their own line. That way, when you have an issue involving multiple property owners, things can get complicated. So in this case, the direction that I received from Eric was that everyone would have a separate line. They could theoretically put their own lines at the same time here and have things ready to go, but they wouldn't be able to utilize them until they came back for a variance gate capacity.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question too, Antonio. So he's gonna pump it through the check valve back to the main. But the main is gravity feed.
Correct.
So there must be some criteria there for his pump so it doesn't charge that main, correct?
Yeah,
How does that work?
Yeah, you're going from a 2-inch to a 4-inch line. So that, and think of that clean out as the high points. You're going to go up with a 2-inch line, and then it's going to gravity down in a 4-inch line. It's one of our standard details, and presumably it's been designed and it works to where it won't have an effect on the gravity.
Okay.
There is, as a precaution, a ball valve that will be installed just before the clean out, protect our staff. So if they are working on it, the maps get noted so that the staff knows that there's a pump system there. And so then they will also know that they could shut that off so that the pump doesn't fire up. The other thing that happens is that when a private pump is connected to the system or that's discharging to the system, I try to get the cut sheet for that, or I do get the cut sheet for that, have the inspector approve that cut sheet, make sure it's not oversized, so you don't end up with a pump that does cause a problem for us.
Yeah, good, thank you. Director Jacobs has a question.
The adjacent property owner who may wish to install be aware the whole lot.
I've spoken to one of them. The other one has spoken to the property owner and they've talked about it. So I don't personally know if he knows it'll be cheaper. But when we get a little bit closer, I sort of leave that to them because that's something I don't know what the contractors say. Contractor may say you should join now. This is what it'll cost. One of the property owners doesn't think they're going to participate. So I kind of leave that more up to the property owners. And I try not to spend too much time getting too many people involved when it's private utility. If it was a public line, that'd be a different story.
One more?
One question. I noticed that mobile home park is very close to the property. Great consideration given to tagging onto they must have a solution.
Yeah, great question. And I actually immediately thought about, could we integrate them into this? So they have a gravity collection system inside the park and it flows northwards away from Bull Pine. And then they have a pump that pumps up. So they would have to redo their entire collection system in order to participate. And we wouldn't want these people, Bull Pine, to flow into the private collection park. I definitely considered it quickly. Not to change course on that one. And didn't think that was going to work, so we didn't decide to go that route.
Follow question. What's the condition? Do we know the condition of the mobile?
I don't personally know. I don't. It's either been there a long time or I'm not aware of it being replaced anytime soon. I don't know. I didn't talk to field staff about whether their pump station causes us issues. I did not explore that.
So they are a TUD customer. The park itself is a TUD customer. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so then we see no advantage to extending the public main, so which is why the engineering department is supporting the variance. A pressurized sewer main for anyone is a little bit extra work. For the district staff, it's quite a bit more work. And so we're supporting this variance for a private sewer line for that reason. This gravity clean out makes a nice clear location for district staff to inspect the line. It'll make things very clear for us in the future and any future property owner. So we're definitely supporting this variance for those reasons. That's it. Capacity when their project's done.
Okay, any other questions for Antonio? Public comment. Anybody on Zoom there, Corey? Okay, bring it back to the board then. Ron?
I'd like to make a motion that the approval for the Watson variance agreement for sewer service be made.
Second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the Watson request for variance. Any further discussion? Okay, yeah, Director Jacobs.
We just asked that we go to second mile to joining property owner. Make sure they understand the implication. And when this, he thinks there's any possibilities of having this pursuing that. Making provision. He comes back 5 years later.
I should have made clear that the property owner, Mr. Watson, or his representative, I did explain that to her that, hey, you should reach out to these people, and she did, and she has a lot of incentive to get them to participate, as if they can split this 3 ways, potentially quite a bit. But yeah, I know Mr. Hesseltine personally, and I'll talk to him.
It might be key for us to there's work being done in the area that we have a better understanding of what the situation is. They need to, they decide they need to upgrade. Just, in the area, in the early area. Probably too late. Is it not feasible for him to look into the mobile home was mutable to your opinion?
Yeah, I think we generally try to discourage different property owners from connecting into private utilities of the adjacent property. It's not something we commonly do. We try to avoid just for potential conflicts. I think in particular, if they couldn't gravity and had to pump, that's another issue. But I will talk to field staff, the collection team, and just ask them, this is what we're doing. This is the right direction. Is there anything I'm missing? Ask them. When I did talk to them about it, and they didn't mention anything about the mobile park. So, and I think if I remember right, this has been going on for a while, that I actually asked them about that. Is there any way of integrating? But I'll follow up with them. Rest of them, they say.
again, sir. I see our role is trying to ratepayers. You know, if they're not looking at it, we need to look at it. You know, do things.
And you need to turn that one on. There you go. Okay, any further discussion? Okay. And we'll go ahead and do the vote. All those in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, passes 4-0. Okay, Melissa, number 5.
Okay, consider approval of agreement regarding construction and transfer of water and sewer main line extension to serve 2 parcels, in the city of Sonora, Shea Carlson, Shea Carlson.
Okay, so again, Antonio Ramirez, Engineering Department, Customer Service. This item is a developer agreement for extension of public water and sewer mains to serve 2 parcels in the city of Sonora. The parcels are located on Beretta Street. If you're familiar with Beretta Street in downtown, you may know Beretta Street as Roller Coaster Hill. If you do know that, the property is actually at the low point of the dip of the roller coaster. It's kind of between they call it the Sonora Youth Center at the south end of Beretta Street and the Dome. So it's in a very densely residential area. There's also an apartment complex fairly close to the north. We see it's this apartment right there. So the properties are owned by several family members. For convenience, I'm just going to say the Pichet parcel and the Carlson parcel. On each parcel, on each parcel, they propose to build a single family residence on each parcel. The Pichet's parcel, Eric, could you scroll to the exhibit map, please? So, as I stated earlier in the earlier item, generally speaking, we're always trying to have a public water and sewer main adjacent to a parcel in order to serve it. And it makes it very clear and convenient for maintenance for the district, but also the property owner. In this case, you'll see the Pichet parcel is adjacent to Beretta Street. So theoretically, he could come in and request water and sewer service, and it'd be fairly straightforward service laterals at Beretta Street and private lines directly to his property. However, some time ago in August 21, the Carlson parcel came in and they requested a variance, just like what we just did for Bullpine. The board granted this variance, basically meaning that they were allowed to put water and sewer services at Beretta Street and run private lines across this Pichet parcel. And that was approved. And within a week or two of that approval, I was contacted by a different property owner to the east, northeast, requesting service. And I had already had some history in this area for some other properties and knew that there was interest potentially in getting water and sewer service. So at that time, I decided, I need to get everybody together and talk about them and let them know what their future is going to be in terms of getting service. My concern was at the time is that the Carlsons also signed in their variance approval, they assigned what was called a participation agreement, which meant that if someone else developed adjacent to them, that they would have to participate in that water and sewer main project. So what could theoretically have happened was the Carlsons could have paid to install sewer and water services, put in a private sewer pump, which they needed to do, built their house, put all this infrastructure in, then they would have had to financially participate in a water and sewer main project. Knowing that there were other parcels, I ended up arranging a meeting and we all got together and I said, look, if anyone wants to develop here, they're putting in a public water and sewer main. Carlson's would have to participate, so you all need to plan for that. It was decided that after it's been going on for quite some time, it's 21 basically. It's the Jerry Pichet has decided that he wants to go ahead and pursue the water and sewer main because he also has other parcels and he knows that if he wants to develop those, he's have to do a water and sewer main. So everyone, most of the people involved are all family members, so they're working on this together. In order to serve these two parcels, they would be extending public water and sewer mains. The sewer main would be approximately my distance there. Yep. Okay, yep, okay, 540 feet of sewer main and 408 feet approximately of water main to the nearest point of the farthest parcel. The mains are proposed to be constructed over properties owned by a gentleman named Michael Thompson. He owns the apartment complex, but he also owns these 4 vacant parcels. Most of the facilities we propose an existing public utility easement on his property, but there is additional easement that he's been willing to grant or has expressed willingness to grant an easement for. They're currently in field meetings and they're kind of citing this project, trying to, with the hopes that you approve the developer. Let's see here. With the developer agreement, you have your standard provisions that you always have, which, state that the property owner, developer would hire a property licensed contractor, that contractor would be insured, that the work would be done under our inspection. It addresses capacity. In this particular instance, is an additional special provision for a reimbursement area of benefit to be established. Once the project's completed, I'll get an invoice, the copy of the invoice from the contractor that the Shays hire, stating what the cost of the main was, and I will create an area of benefit based upon acreage. So there'll be 4 parcels owned by Mr. Thompson, where I'll identify his cost share, again, based upon the acreage, and I'll document this in a binder. And if and when he applies for service in the future, I will collect a check and pass it on to Pichet, the Shays and the Carlson. He's aware of this, and that reimbursement typically lasts for our rules 10 years. To be clear, TUD is not constructing these water and sewer mains. Property owner developer hires a contractor, pays them, and when they're done, they will sign a grant deed, and we will take them over for operation. I said a lot, so Eric, do you feel like I maybe missed anything? Okay, so with that, I'd be happy to take questions.
Director Ringen has a question.
So you can't tell by looking at the diagram, but I'm assuming, which is always a bad thing to do, that there'll be proper separation between the sewer and the water line.
Yeah, we've already reviewed and approved plans for this, and that's one of the things we do. Check for separation, not only horizontally, but vertically as well.
So that must be a fairly wide easement then.
It is, and I think they did that on purpose. It's also a road. It was defined as a road and public utility easement, and I think it's at least 20 wide. It's a 10-foot separation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Director Boatright.
Did the Carlson property actually construct the small spaghetti lines?
No.
Under the variance? So that property has not been connected
Correct.
to the system yet.
Yeah, you essentially, the board approved a variance, and then a week later, literally, that you may want to wait, see where this goes. So, and they've waited till today.
Did they ever construct a residence on
Nope.
that? Okay, so they just postponed the entire project. Thank you.
Director Jacobs.
In the, is that loud enough? Great. Great. In the documents, it says it's an area benefit for 4 parcels. 4 parcels, the area benefit designates the additional parcel, which in the future could receive service. So, in addition to the neighbor who owns the apartment building, the Shea family has additional parcels that they want to.
Yeah, yes, Eric, if you could zoom out on this. Oh, here, for the. So the parcel directly south, the ones that has the box that says parcel to be served, that big parcel right there, and he also owns the one to the south of it.
So the line that we're putting in, is that going to serve that parcel?
He will have to, at the time he comes in, he may request a variance for a private line again across his own property or the Carlson parcel, or we may require a main. I don't know yet. It depends upon what his plan is. I don't know if he's thinking of splitting it. If he's thinking of splitting it, probably would be a main. But until he comes in, I won't know how that's going to happen. The other property to the Kiefer parcel, I like that. It's the same thing there. When he comes in, I probably should have said this in the beginning. We kind of explore this whole area. We look at Google Earth. We kind of get a sort of an idea of the topography to see can all this gravity. That's a big key when it comes to sewer. So all the parcels to the east and to the south would all sort of gravity towards this sewer main. So as each individual comes in, I would make that determination with Eric and staff on how best to proceed, whether it be a variance or main extension or just a service lateral.
My question is the line size to serve?
Oh, yes.
Future parcel.
Yes, 6-inch main, so it definitely could handle this entire area.
What would be the maximum number of parcels?
On a 6-inch?
In this? So the investment that's being made, what's the potential capacity? Additional parcel. The additional parcels.
Well, in this case, so the 2 parcels right now, they're each proposing a single family residence each. If Boucher is able to do 2 on his, like maybe he could, if he was allowed to by the city and they issued 2 building permits, there wouldn't be any reason we would say no to that. This has to have a separate service lateral for each one.
Second question, just in terms of my being able to visualize what's going on, it would be helpful to have a photo now. Both this project and the other project. I don't know. This would provide that would help to get a sense.
Yeah, it could be difficult because usually, so on the other one, Bullpine Lane, I wouldn't really do a topo map for that. And oftentimes the topo map in this case, on an engineered plan set wouldn't come till after you approve it. And so one thing I didn't convey, which I intended to, was so for your knowledge that by the time I get here, I've talked to all kinds of people here at the district, inspectors been out there, guiding me along so that when I come here that the engineer department is suggesting and recommending and supporting is likely what's going to be designed. So usually there's quite a bit of work that's been done by the time. I don't know if we could be able to provide topo. Google Earth is probably the best way to get elevations. And but if you do have questions in a staff report, I'm sure that they could be channeled through Eric to me and I could answer.
Director Boatright?
Why are we building an 8-inch water main up to that point? That seems like an awful large line to take a spaghetti straw off of. That's going to create maintenance for the.
So I asked the question, do we want a 6 or 8-inch main? The reason we ended up with an 8-inch main is the velocities during a fire flow condition exceed what the typical standards are that we would want to see in a 6 inch. So,
Yeah, and what part of what goes into that is if you look at this parcel here, and the other parcels, they're pretty large. We're in the city of Sonora, pretty large. This is a single feed line, so we don't necessarily have plans to loop it. So the 8-inch water main was what was best for what Antonio said, but also we don't know what kind of density will be here in the future. And to find these large parcels in the city is kind of rare.
Why then would we not request the extension on that easement going across 0220127? It appears that that easement actually stops.
it does. The easement was created on the parcel map of those 4, and it does stop where I show it there. The developer did explore the option of potentially extending across the parcel ending in 27. That would have brought in a couple more parcels into the reimbursement area of benefit. But in the end, they just decided they didn't want to spend the money basically to extend the mains on the additional 100 feet. I think is something like that. They just decided this is where they wanted, and they're not obligated to go any farther than they did, because you just have to get to the nearest point of your farthest parcel that you're trying to serve. We did have conversations with Mr. Kiefer, a couple of them, and trying to get his involvement, letting him know what was happening, and he chose not to participate.
Whose responsibility would it be to get a easement extension going through there at some future time?
Whoever looks to develop. So if Mr. Kiefer came in, he would have to get an easement. Thompson. Kind of go through this exact same process with us.
Is there any reason that TUD would look to extend this line? It's hard to tell what goes off to what would be the east, I guess, on this, just a portion of it.
Yeah, we did look at that. That's a good question. I feel like it's really loud. Sorry, guys.
That's what I thought too earlier.
So we did, and actually this project's been going on for a long time. I want to say Antonio and I were on site maybe a year and a half ago, and we actually walked the terrain and back. Almost feel like trying to. Okay. And to the east is the prominent ridge behind Adventist Health. So if you're familiar, that was cleared a couple years ago. So there really, as you reach to the east, the elevation extends quite a bit. We looked at, could we loop the water system into the water facilities we have on the eastern side of that ridge? And it just, with the topography, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. So we feel like there isn't a whole lot of potential other than if they develop the top of the ridge, then there need to be a pump station or water could come from a different direction. We have analyzed this. So I think what you see here is pretty much the areas, but that, like I said, they're pretty large parcels. They're in the city, they're close to utilities, they're close to streets. We don't know 10, 15, 20 years from now what sort of density will be here. So, and to have these 4 parcels and already an easement, it really made sense to not grant a variance, but to require a public sewer mains to be constructed.
Are you done?
Yeah. Other than, that kind of, 15 to 20 years of maintaining an 8-inch line with very, single family use, we're looking at a couple 100 gallons per day per parcel flowing through an 8-inch line. That how long does it take to turn over and increase work on distribution? Thank you.
Director Jacobs.
Just a question, you talked about the zoning and the density we don't know what the densities are. Do we know what it's zoned for? properties owned, what's a maximum? To be there.
I don't know off the top of my head. What I do know is the Kiefer parcel at one point had a approved subdivision map which expired for 5 lots there. But I do not know the current.
Nor do I. I did look at the zoning, so I don't want to be remiss and say, oh, we didn't even consider that. But we also know that, you know, things could be rezoned. And given just the parcel size and the fact that there was already a proposed subdivision parcel map, if you will, we can reasonably assume it could. Maybe it will only be 5, but maybe not.
The Kiefer lot is the one adjacent to the Carlson property.
This.
And it's much bigger than what you're seeing there. I just cut it off. You also have new accessory dwelling unit laws, which essentially you almost have to assume that every parcel has 2. You could have 2 homes.
So the lines are sized for the maximum future development.
Reasonably sized.
Based on
Yes.
Director Reagan?
So, Antonio, why is there not going to be a fire hydrant installed? And how are you going to flush that 8-inch line?
There is a hydrant, so at the end of the upper dash line, you'll see a circle with 2 little tick marks. That will be a hydrant.
It will, okay.
Yeah,
And
as
so
a stand,
that's how you could flush it then.
Yeah, as a standard, sometimes we'll call them a blow off, but on our map, it really is just a regular hydrant. And its purpose, we don't provide it for the intention of providing fire flow. It's there for operational reasons, so that at least once a year, our staff goes out and flushes annually. But obviously, it can be used for fire fighting purposes as well. And the city will be notified when we that there's a hydrant. We'll probably do a flow test on it.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
President Kearns.
Okay.
I could just make one
Sure,
real
you
quick
bet.
comment. I just want to acknowledge all the hard work Antonio's done on this. And to your point, Director Jacobs earlier on the previous variance is going the extra mile with the customers. That's what he has done. He has really engaged all of these property owners, you know, people that are very much specialized in their own fields, but it isn't water and sewer and it isn't development. And so he's had to educate people, you know, outline sort of all the steps, convene meetings, numerous phone calls. He's really gone the extra mile to get to this point. Otherwise, what we would have is spaghetti lines, I mean, for lack of a better descriptor, and really poor planning in terms of infrastructure development, even for a small area like this in the city. And those become issues because once people install the individual service lines, there's really very little incentive for them to come back and do the water main. Even when they have a participation agreement, he would have been struggling with Pichet and Carlson to get them to come back after they'd already spent a fair amount of money participate in this project. So he's done a really great job.
I should also compliment the Pichets and Carlsons because they've been very patient and very hardworking, a lot of effort into it. Unfortunately, Mr. Pichets has some sort of experience in his occupation with this stuff, so he's a great guy to work with.
Good. Okay, if there's no other comment from the board, we'll open it for public comment. Corey, anything on the web? Okay, bring it back to the board. Director Ringen.
Okay, I'd like to make that we make a approval of the agreement regarding construction and transfer of water and sewer main line extensions to serve 2 parcels in the city of Sonora, Peach Carlson and Peach Carlson.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the the agreement. Any further comment? Okay, all those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you very much, Antonio.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Move on to staff reports.
Brief, on the 26th of April, I met, Supervisor Kathleen Half. It's now like a monthly meeting I have with her, kind of a standing meeting. We talked about many things, all things water. Typical topics revolve around the Palm County Water Agency and what their purpose is and where they're going. We've been trying, Melissa and I have been trying to pin them down, them being the county and the water agency with it for a joint meeting. It's tentative for June 15th, June 15th. So it's not permanent and we don't have it's not inked in yet, but that's all I have to report.
You want to talk about the McClintock meeting?
Oh, so well, not off very well today. So on May 2nd, we met with members of McClintock's office via Zoom. Get their names, Rocky Deal and Kimberly Pruitt, right? McClintock's office. And we had all of us managers, Director Earns, right? Good meeting. We covered a lot of ground. Regulatory requirements are coming down, EPA or the state, even though they're federal folks. We pressed upon them that these regulations, these unfunded mandates are coming down from everywhere, going to really hurt a lot of us special districts up here in the mountain. Particularly the CARB, it's a state issue, but this CARB regulation required, in fact, CARB adopted their policy of this advanced clean fuels. So if districts like TUD don't do anything between now and 2027, all of our vehicles, new purchase. So there's ways to get around that, or at least apply for extensions, but those extensions aren't going to be granted if we're not really proactive. So we've got a lot of work. I talked to them about the EPA lead service line replacement, lead service line inventory implications of that. I don't want to get into it here, but that as it states could cost the district lots and lots and lots of mandates. We do the inventory and we can't 100% say that with all certainty that ever in the lifetime of that water main in Sonora that's almost 100 years old, never had a lead service line upstream or downstream of it, we're going to replace that service. You can imagine the expense that will. So talked about the California's water rights modernization efforts, and how, again, I don't think that bodes well for most agencies like TUD. If we have, senior water rights, how that's going to be at all in any of us up. So yeah, that and a few other topics. What, did I miss anything? I know I did, but.
We need to. But also submit. So.
Might chime in a little bit on that too. That EV requirement from CARB, that was heavy equipment as well.
Yeah.
And I'm not aware of anything like that even being available at this point in time. Maybe there is, but it's not widely available.
Not widely available. Eric Hall had gone to some sort of expo in Las Vegas a month or so ago. And that was one of his things to go at this expo was around heavy equipment, dump trucks, excavators, you name it, all kinds of people, big to small. And one of his missions was to go inquire about the availability of these vehicles, and they're just not out there. CARB simply says the technology will be here, and it's up to PG&E and others to get the infrastructure from PG&E standpoint. It's bizarre to me, but like I said, we got to be proactive.
Okay, who's next?
Microphone this time. Wanted to give the board just real brief update on the work that's going on Phoenix Lake Road with the Ridgewood Pipeline. One of your commenters, Mr. Brennan, expressed that he understands the need for the infrastructure and the public has been pretty good to deal with out there. But I do want to let you know we're about 750 feet of pipeline in. We started at Resort Road and we're nearing Lori Lane, if you know where that is on Phoenix Lake Road. The contractor has encountered a little bit of rock, nothing really too extreme or that would impact the budget at this point. And they just continue to be trenching on the northbound lane in the travel lane, in the alignment that we had discussed at our last meeting, which will not involve putting pipeline in any of the drainage courses. So that's where we're at on that project. And then real briefly, the Zone 4 tank. This is a contract the board awarded to Resource Development Corporation to build a new 400,000 gallon tank in Ewok, in the Sugar Pine area. We were hoping to have the contractor, subcontractor move in and do some tree clearing so that then TUD's crews could do the grading so that then the tank builder could move in. And as part of the CEQA document adopted by this board earlier, we had to do a bird survey. Unfortunately, the bird survey resulted in a couple of red-breasted nuthatches and mountain chickadees that are on the site. We're hoping they'll fledge and vacate in the next probably month or so. So we're going to be checking back at the end of May, which kind of delays the project a little bit, but we're in close communication with the contractor and they understand that. And we aren't under a specific time frame on this project, but wanted to let you know that that's just part of doing construction with CEQA compliance is that you got to do bird surveys.
Mr. Steve?
Good morning, Tag on Steve Sheffield, Director. Just a friendly reminder, a couple important things coming up in the future. I know these reports, everything's kind of what we've gone on. A week from today, we're going to have a special board meeting. I call it our budget workshop. It's very important. I think it's more of a, chance to just have a discussion. There's no action associated with it. Really to have a discussion, answer any and all questions, get some direction, go for that. So that's the one reminder. And then before we know it, it's going to be June, typically June 13th. The first meeting is when we adopt our budget for next year before the end of the fiscal year. And the very next day will be our public hearing, proposed rates. Just one.
Else? Eric's not here today, our call, so bring it back to the board. Director's Communications, Director Ringen.
Okay, on May 5th, attended and participated in the Mountain Counties Water Resource Association Legislative Committee meeting. And I'm really pretty proud of this committee. I've been on it for quite a number of years and we've got some really good members on it. And we've now started on the next batch of legislative actions and so on to evaluate them and then get it ready to be submitted to the Board of Directors for Mountain Counties for their discussion and hopefully approval or input. And I think it's really great because what we're trying to do is stay ahead of the curve. There's so many bills that are coming out and they come out of nowhere, and some of them get almost rubber stamped. So be on top of it, I think, is very, very important for the Mountain Counties group, because there's so many of us that could be affected by some of these things that are coming down. You mentioned one of them, and that was the water rights situation, and that would be a disaster if the water department was able to get their alarms on that. So anyway, so that's that. And then last week, about a week ago, spent some time with GM Perkins, and I think that this board really made the right decision to have to, I mean, I was, like I said, when I made the motion, I said I did it reluctantly to prove that $375,000 addition, but we saw the beginnings of that project. Moyle, he had his asphalt cutting crew out there, and but what we did is went around to the various items, infrastructure that's going to be taken offline. Oh my God. I mean, it couldn't happen any sooner than, I mean, it's really going to be saving the ratepayers a lot of money, and the crews a lot of work and so on. So just thought I'd mention that. And then I don't know if anybody had a chance to read this. All the years I've been with TUD or following along with TUD prior, I have never seen a report like this. This is just excellent. And I know that one employee, Angel, I think is her name, who's a water treatment person. But I don't know who else was involved in this, but this has got some information in it that it's a shame that it's so expensive. We couldn't send it out, you know, postage and send it to every ratepayer, because there's a lot of good tips and info in there. But I think at least there should be something on the website that leads people easily to that, so that if they want to, if you know, something that would kind of tweak their imagination and make them want to go read it. So that's it for me.
And it is available on the website. Yeah. So. Director Boatright?
No reports at this time.
Okay. Director Jacobs? Okay. I've just got a couple things. I just want to tag on to that McClintock staff meeting we had. That water rights modernization issue that came up, that as Don said, I couldn't agree more. Whenever Sacramento or Washington for that matter starts talking about modernizing our water rights, first thing I think of is red flags go up, because how is that going to be good for us up here in the mountain communities? And I'm not seeing how it will be good for us in the mountain communities. I think that we're going to have to follow that very closely, pay attention, and also the three bills in Sacramento right now that I believe at least one of them's gone through committee, maybe all three, but they all have to do with water rights and potential changes in 150 years of water rights and the way that they've been handled and set up in priority. A little bit scary. So we need to pay attention to that, and I'm sure we will with Jesse. And so that's very important in my opinion. Also met with Board board chairman half as well, and spent some time with her on Friday, just going over water issues and water advisory committee. I was glad to hear she's down at the Aqua meeting right now with Director Balin. So that was good to hear. And then also yesterday, I was at the Aqua JPIA annual or semi-annual board meeting for our insurance. I guess probably the one good news, there's a couple of good news, but one of them was that cybersecurity rates, I think, looks like they're starting to plateau. But unfortunately, liability and whatnot is continuing to climb, and it's just with all the fires and other liability issues that a lot of districts have had throughout the year. It's just causing those rates to continue to go up. So not much relief there, but we're still miles ahead being with them rather than going on the open market for insurance. So it's a good thing that we're involved in that. The other good news at the JPI board meeting is that there was the election for executive committee members for the JPI board. There was 4 seats available. There was 12 people who, 12 board members who were vying for those 4 seats. And here last meeting or a couple of meetings ago, we passed a resolution in support of Scott Ratterman from Calaveras County Water District, and he was elected to the executive board. So we were happy to see that. And I got a chance to talk with him afterwards and congratulate him. And he really appreciated the support. So I wanted to be sure that we'll do that. So, and that is all I have on my report. So anybody else have anything before we adjourn? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you for coming.